Quiet, you! Shut it! Got it? Right. Hey, let's get out of here. Right. Come on.
Do you have even the vaguest recollection of sunlight?
It has broken through in dreams.
Remarkably impenetrable. Almost mythical. Did the gods smite anyone with fog?
I believe Zeus blew some Jason's way.
Ah. New formula?
Yes, a serum which, when ingested, diminishes all signs of life, from breathing to heartbeat, to such a degree as to resemble death.
Why would you want someone to think you were dead when you weren't?
The Milne-Smith case?
Ah, of course.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. McGlynn.
What's that?
Thank you for the tea!
Oh! Corn, beef, and cabbage! Yeah. Oh.
Where's Mrs. Hudson?
Oh, nursing her sick friend, I'm afraid. She sent Mrs. McGlynn around this morning, her cousin, several times removed.
Oh, I see she's in mourning.
Yes, her husband died 30 years ago.
Oh, the Irish are a sentimental people.
Anything of interest in the paper, Watson?
Oh, I believe you have eyes in the back of your head.
I have at least a well-polished, silver-plated coffee pot in front.
Ah. There have been numerous petty thefts.
Oh, the London criminal is certainly a dull fellow. It is fortunate for this community that I am not a criminal. Suppose that I were Brooks, or Woodhouse, or any of the other 50 men who have good reason for taking my life. How long could I last against my own pursuit? A summons, a bogus appointment, and all would be over. It is well they don't have fog in the Latin countries. The countries of assassination. Oh, my mind is like a racing engine, tearing itself to pieces because it is not connected up with the work for which it was built. Life is commonplace. The papers are sterile. Audacity and romance seem to have passed forever from the criminal world. So, Watson, do you not propose to invest in South African securities?
How on earth do you know that?
Confess yourself utterly taken aback.
I am.
I ought to make you sign a paper to that effect.
Why?
Because, in exactly 2 minutes, you will say, how absurdly simple.
I am sure I will say nothing of the kind.
You see, my dear Watson, it was not really difficult by close inspection of the groove between your left forefinger and thumb to feel sure that you do not propose to invest your capital in the goldfields.
I see no connections.
Here are the missing links in the very simple chain. 1. You came home with chalk between your left forefinger and thumb when you came home from the club last night. 2. You put chalk there when you play billiards. 3. You never play billiards except with Thurston. 4. You told me 4 weeks ago that Thurston had an option on some South African property which he wished to share with you. 5. Your checkbook is locked in my drawer and you have not asked for the key. 6. You do not propose to invest your money in this manner.
How absurdly simple! Oh, would that my eyes were as good as yours.
Oh, but they are. You see, but you do not observe. For example, you have frequently seen the stairs that lead up to this room from the hall.
Frequently.
How often?
Some hundreds of times.
Then how many are there?
How many? I don't know.
Quite so. You have not observed, and yet you have seen. Now, I know that there are exactly 17 steps that lead up to this room from the hall, because I have both seen and observed.
No, you've just counted them more times
Have
than I
you set a date for your nuptials? No misgivings, I hope.
None. I am supremely contented and eternally entranced.
Come in.
Mr. Holmes! Mr. Sherlock Holmes!
I'm he, and who are you?
Turner's the name, sir. Mrs. Turner.
Pray, take a seat.
Thank you, sir.
How may I be of assistance to you?
It is I who wishes to be of assistance to you, sir. I was given to understand by a neighbour that Mrs. Hudson is currently indisposed, and I'm here to offer myself as a replacement. Cooking, washing, and the like.
I'm afraid you are a little late. Mrs. Hudson has already sent...
I work very hard, sir. No one works harder than I do, especially not that old woman who opened the door.
Very well. How long have you been a domestic servant?
All my life, sir, since I was a child.
When were you last employed?
Just today, sir. I've just come from there.
Really? What were your duties today?
Oh, scrubbing floors, hauling coal, and the like.
I see.
I'm sure you'll find my fee quite modest.
I'm sure I will.
Might you be interested?
Yes. I'm interested in how a day of back-breaking work, hauling coal, which you have just come from, has left not a trace of dust on your shoes or fingertips, but has in fact scented your hair with lavender. Further, although you attempt to hide it, you are in possession of an iridescent complexion, and have been upbraided only by the lifting of fine-bone china, and perhaps the occasional petit four.
You win, Oscar. He said you would.
Who said I would?
It's all right. You may come in now. It's all over. You've won.
And now for the most satisfying of all retorts. I told you so. Good evening, Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Wilde, always a surprise, even when expected.
May I present Helen, formerly of Troy, better known to the clamoring multitudes as...
Mrs. Lillie Langtry, or the Jersey Lily.
Very good. Mrs. Langtry, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Dear lady.
Mr. Holmes.
Mrs. Langtry, Oscar, allow me to introduce my assistant, Dr. John Watson.
Dr. Watson.
Mrs. Langtry. Oh, dear. You look just as you do in Edward Poynter's portrait of you.
Lillie has been sketched and painted so often that I sometimes fear that she poses without realizing it.
Oscar.
A great, great pleasure, Mrs. Langtry. A great...
Dr. Watson, are you all right?
Dr. Watson is no doubt lost in thought of his upcoming nuptials.
You're getting married. How wonderful.
I'm getting married. Oh, yes. I'm getting married. Thank you.
He is supremely contented and eternally entranced.
Quite. I was just wondering, Holmes, how is it that you and Mr. Wilde
Are acquainted?
I've never known you to have a penchant for the theatre.
I don't. While Mr. Wilde possesses in abundance the skills of his craft, he, like many brilliant men, has an Achilles heel, which is
Titles.
Titles?
titles. That small thread which binds together all the rest, I have, on occasion, suggested a title or two to Mr. Wilde.
Are you working on a play now?
Yes, with Mrs. Langtry, actually. And I'm afraid I won't be needing your services for this one, Mr. Holmes.
Glad to hear it. What's the latest called?
The importance of being forthright. What?
Nothing.
It's a wonderful play. His best yet, I think.
A few mesmerizing scenes for your perusal.
Will you be appearing in it, Mrs. Langtry? Do say you will be. Oh, please say it's true.
No.
There's a perfect part for her, Gwendolen, but she insists that she's too old.
I am too old. Gwendolen to be played by someone in her 20s, not 40.
40 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have of their own free choice remained 44 years.
Is that from the new third act?
Do you like it?
Very much. What do you think, Mr. Holmes? Could I play a woman in her 20s?
You could play anything. Anyone. Anytime.
Would you like me to tell you the truth, Mrs. Langtry?
I wish you would.
You are too old.
Holmes!
I think I'm going to like you, Mr. Holmes.
Didn't I hear once that you had a go at Hamlet?
In my school days.
Could you be persuaded to return to the stage? I have a character named Algernon Moncrief.
Oh, you may stop right there, Mr. Wilde. I'm afraid that I could never give my undivided attention to anything named Algernon. Now, let me ask you a question. What was the purpose of this little gambit?
Shall I begin?
Please.
Mrs. Langtry is being blackmailed.
Oh, dear.
Unaware of the scope of your successes, Mr. Holmes, she refused to seek out assistance, stating that no one would be able to handle the case. I, on the other hand, appealed to her ego, suggesting that if you could see through a disguise worn by our country's greatest actress, then perhaps you could see through this mystery and identify the criminal.
You saw right through my scullery maid.
It wasn't difficult.
That's because I'm not nearly as accomplished of an actress as Mr. Wilde thinks.
Liar! She was assaulted in her dressing room at the Lyceum on Saturday night during the closing night performance of the play Danger, a cache of letters of a highly personal nature, written by Mrs. Langtry and a certain gentleman, was stolen.
Are you all right, Mrs. Langtry? Have the brutes hurt you?
I have recovered, thank you, Doctor.
Did no one hear you scream?
It was masked by a cry from the audience.
A cry?
When the hero of the play makes a surprise entrance and stabs the madman. I was able to aim my prop gun at the assailants, but even that did not deter them.
And your prop gun is an authentic firearm?
Yes, altered of course, so it can never discharge.
What were the letters doing in your dressing room?
I brought them there for safekeeping.
Safekeeping in your dressing
A
room?
message had been sent to my home hours before I was meant to leave for the theatre. This person said that they knew the letters were in my home and that a burglary was intended for that very night.
Well, they were bluffing, of course. In all likelihood, they had no idea where or if the letters even existed. All they needed to do was wait until you left for the theatre with a bulging purse, and they'd know they had guessed correct.
I had been burgled just weeks before.
And nothing was taken.
Nothing of any value.
They couldn't find the correspondence on their own, so they let you help them.
Then another note,
Saying?
that unless she turned over a paltry £10,000, the compromising letters would be made public.
£10,000? Outrageous!
May I see that note, Mrs. Langtry?
I'm sorry. I burned it.
Burned it?
I don't know why. I panicked and threw it into the fire. It was typed as well.
Could you raise the sum demanded?
Of course she could. The woman is worth millions upon millions.
Oscar! I'm addressing Mrs. Langtry.
Yes, I could raise it.
I take it these are intimate letters?
Highly.
From a youthful indiscretion? No doubt.
Exactly. I'm afraid you must think me a hard person.
Nonsense.
It is absurd to divide people into good or bad. People are either charming or tedious. You are charming.
I don't know that women are usually rewarded for being charming. I think they are usually punished for it.
Is that mine?
How is the blackmailer to prove authenticity?
The handwriting,
Say it is a forgery.
my private notepaper, and the gentleman.
Stolen.
The seal.
Imitated?
The photograph.
Bought.
We are both in the photograph.
That is very bad.
There you have it. The pure and simple truth of the matter.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Oh, I like that.
No. Hindsight shows us that the truth is always simple. It is man's thinking that is muddled.
Yes, but what I said sounds so much better.
Mrs. Langtry, it could hardly be said that I am a man who listens to the idle gossip of the day, but it seems to me that a few years back there was an inescapable story making the rounds.
The insidious aspect of gossip is that so much of it is true.
Darling Lillie, remember, I like persons better than principles, and I like persons with no principles better than anything else in the whole world.
I believe the gentleman in question was the future king, Edward VII.
Good God! The Prince of Wales?
Bertie to his friends, of which he had none.
Oscar?
Yes?
Shut up!
All right.
So you see why I must reclaim this correspondence, then?
I do indeed.
But Mrs. Langtry, why didn't you see fit to keep the letters with your lawyer or your banker?
I just thought
I should
that...
think that given the power of our good friend Prince Bertie, it might be difficult to tell what sort of negative influence might be brought down upon a businessman.
Exactly.
Mr. Holmes, will you help us?
If I am to take up your plight, I must understand every detail, take time to consider. The smallest point may be the most essential.
Yes, that of course is understood.
Mrs. Langtry,
Yes.
how's the ransom to be collected?
He's calling for it this evening.
Here.
Tonight, at your home, do not change your plans. There will be a knock on the door. Give the ransom to the man who appears. Do this, or else publication will follow, and an innocent heart will be broken.
Who is the innocent heart?
I'm assuming Bertie's wife, Princess Alexandra.
Perhaps the blackmailer's referring to you.
You're sweet.
Was Princess Alexandra aware of the affair?
I really couldn't say. This was some time ago.
I repeat, a youthful indiscretion.
What are the plans you requested not to change?
We're reading a new scene tonight.
Is this common knowledge?
Oscar and I meet regularly, a fact that is well known in theatrical circles.
Who will be present?
Myself and Lillie, of course. And Mrs. Paget will be reading Lady Bracknell.
Who is this Mrs. Paget?
I've never actually made her acquaintance, but by all accounts an astonishing performer. Spent many years on stage in America. Nevertheless, they say her talent is still intact.
She was recommended to me by my leading man in danger. Oh, Oscar, I forgot to tell you. She sent a message saying she's been suffering a chest cold.
No!
But she said she wouldn't miss the opportunity to read for you.
Don't frighten me like that.
Just you three, then.
And my housekeeper, Mrs. Torrey.
How long has she been with you?
Oh, over a year. She's with me constantly. At home, the theatre, travels with me. I'd be lost without her.
More to the point, you never be on time. She's a godsend.
Have you informed her of your situation?
I didn't want to concern her. She's very maternal towards me.
What is your address, Mrs. Langtry?
21 Pont Street.
Kindly draw for me the floor plan of your home. Say nothing to the two ladies and do just as the note says. Proceed as it were any other evening. If at any point you should find yourself in danger, simply...
Danger? What danger do you foresee?
It would cease to be a danger if we could define it.
Oh.
In which room will you and your guests be gathered this evening?
The sitting room.
Are there windows?
Yes.
Do this. Put the ransom in an envelope and secret it in your sitting room.
Surely you're not suggesting she pay the blackguard?
I'm suggesting she put the ransom in an envelope and secret it in her sitting room.
Ah.
During the course of the evening, I will make myself known to you.
Mr. Holmes, can you make a guess as to who these people might be?
I never guess. It is a shocking habit, destructive to the logical faculty.
Mr. Holmes, how can I ever thank you?
I have done nothing yet which deserves your thanks.
Well then, Oscar?
Mr. Holmes, I know we can count on you. You have a way of seeing through the accepted reality to what really exists. Thank God. Otherwise, I would be the author of The Picture of Dorian Green.
Good to see you again, Mr. Wilde. Mrs. Langtry, a pleasure to have made your acquaintance.
Good afternoon, Mr. Holmes. Dr. Watson?
Mrs. Langtry, I can't begin to tell you, to express. Oh, your performance in As You Like It alone was. Oh, it's a great.
Oh dear.
Oscar?
Yes?
Shut up!
All right.
Goodbye, Dr. Watson.
Goodbye. Oh, Mrs. Langtry, you forgot your blouse.
Thank you.
Holmes, old boy. You know, Lily's led rather an unconventional life. I hope that won't
No. It is not my business to judge the client, Mr. Wilde.
Brilliant. Ta-ta.
Kindly look at the name Langtry in the index, Doctor.
Keats, Calvin, Kierkegaard. Langtry. Lillie Langtry, otherwise known as the Jersey Lily. Born Emily Charlotte Lebertron in 1853. Jersey, Channel Islands. Raised a tomboy among 6 brothers. Denied a formal education. She received lessons from a French governess during the day and her brother's tutors during the evenings. From these humble beginnings, she has made a name for herself as popular actress. Yes. Captivating raconteur. Yes. And devastating companion. Oh, I'd like to know more. She has done this with nothing to aid her, except perhaps her enchanting sense of humor and her exceptional, some would say startling beauty. Some would say, indeed, all would say,
I believe you are taken with the Lady Watson.
as is every man who lays eyes on her. Don't you find her countenance beyond compare?
I am more captivated with the question of why Mrs. Langtry has not been altogether truthful with.
What do you mean?
But to begin with, the charade is domestic servant.
She said herself she wasn't a consummate actress.
No one is that unconvincing unless they want to be. And then there are the notes.
Surely you believe their authenticity?
Oh, well, I do. The 2 that I saw, but there is a third. The note that she burned.
She panicked.
Mrs. Langtry makes her living, and a fine one, controlling her emotions. And her fear of scandal.
Nothing unusual about that.
If she were any other woman, no. But Bertie's hedonistic adventures have already been hinted at in the more scurrilous journals. I shall need your assistance tonight, Watson.
Anything.
You are to station yourself outside Mrs. Langtry's this evening. You are to situate yourself close to the sitting room window.
Yes.
You are to watch for a figure that comes to the window.
Yes.
When the figure raises his hand, so, you are to run to the front of the residence and throw into the foyer what I give you to throw, and will at the same time raise cry of fire. You quite follow me?
Entirely.
It is nothing very formidable. An ordinary plumber's smoke rocket, fitted with a cap at either end to make it self-lighting. When you raise your cry of fire, it will be taken up by a number of people. When the smoke is cleared, you may join me inside of Mrs. Langtry's residence. I hope I have made myself clear.
I am to remain invisible. Get near the open window, watch for the signal, throw in the object and raise cry of fire, and return to you when the smoke is cleared.
Precisely.
You may rely on me entirely.
Excellent. Tonight, Mrs. Langtry is going to show me what the blackmailer is really after.
Show you?
I think it is time that I prepare for the new role I'm about to play. Come, Watson, the game's afoot. Come in.
Good day, gentlemen. I am here in search of Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
I am Sherlock Holmes.
May I speak with you alone, sir?
This is Dr. John Watson, my assistant. You may trust him as thoroughly as you intend to trust me.
Do you know who I am, sir?
I believe you are Abdul Karim, attendant and confidant to Her Majesty, Queen Victoria.
You are correct. I am here at the request of a certain person regarding a most delicate matter.
You may tell the royal family they have nothing to fear. Sherlock Holmes is already on the case of the missing letters.
Letters? What letters?
The plot thickens.
I'm called Little Buttercup, dear Little Buttercup, though I could never tell why. But still I'm called Buttercup, poor Little Buttercup, sweet Little Buttercup boy. Lovely, Mrs. Torrey, thank you. I was thinking we might try some of the tea I brought back from Paris, if there's any left. Would you mind? I'll ask Mrs. Drake. Mrs. Langtry, are you all right? I'm quite well. I wish you confided in me, ma'am. Maybe... No, I couldn't possibly burden you, Mrs. Torrey. It would be no burden. Is it reading the new play, ma'am? Are you nervous about that? Yes, that's it. You've guessed it. I thought as much. Remember how nervous you were before My Heart's Desire, or Angel Without Wings, or the last one, Danger. Mrs. Langtry, you're a great actress. I'm really not that talented. No, you listen to me. You're a national treasure. That's what the critics call you. You'll be magnificent. Mark my words. Thank you, Mrs. Torrey. I feel better already. I'll ask Mrs. Drake about the tea, ma'am. Mr. Oscar Wilde to see you, ma'am. Oh, Oscar!
Sweetheart!
Oscar!
Your heart is racing faster than a Derby winner's.
I know. Distract me.
How?
Oh, I don't know. What have you been doing since we left Mr. Holmes?
All the afternoon, I've been working on a proof of one of my poems. I took out a comma, and then I put it back in again. Oh, I'm exhausted. Cucumber sandwiches!
Oscar!
Simple pleasures, the last refuge of the complex.
How can you eat at a time like this?
Lillie, if I stopped eating every time the world proved to be a hostile place, I would cease to exist. Listen to me. Mr. Sherlock Holmes is with us now. You couldn't be in any better hands than if you were locked in the embrace of Jesus Christ.
Given my past, I'm afraid Jesus Christ would have nothing to do with me.
Are you joking? He'd take one good look at you and tell dear Papa, sorry, old man, there's been a change in plans. So, where'd you hide the ransom?
Oh no. What if that's the blackmailer? Why hasn't Mr. Holmes shown up yet? What am I going to do?
Hold steady, old girl.
I'm Mrs. Paget to see you, ma'am. Thank God. Hello, Mrs. Paget. I'm Lillie. I'm very pleased to make your acquaintance. Welcome to my home. And may I introduce Mr. Oscar Wilde?
Just Oscar. Mrs. Paget, a delight, I'm sure. I've heard a great deal about you.
Oh, and you, please, call me Gertrude.
Mrs. Torrey, please take Gertrude's wrap.
No, I must keep warm. My chest, you know, I'm in a weakened state. Doctor's orders.
I understand.
But otherwise, I'm as fit as a fiddle and ready to play Lady Bracknell.
Do you like her?
Do I like her? I love her. Oh, such a creature.
Is it possible we have met one another before?
I'd quite be certain if we had.
Did you enjoy your time in the colonies?
Yes. You know, we really have everything in common with America nowadays, except, well, you know, language.
Well said.
Oh, tea. May I?
Let me get you some, ma'am.
Just tea, no milk. For the voice, you know, must take every precaution.
Of course.
So, Oscar, do you prefer writing comedy or drama?
Comedy. The possibilities are endless.
Why is that?
People cry for the same handful of reasons, but they laugh for as many reasons as there are people.
Here you are, ma'am.
Call me Gertrude, won't you?
Well, I don't know, ma'am. I'm not used to...
It's all right, Mrs. Torrey.
Go ahead and live a little, Mrs. Torrey. You have her permission.
What is your Christian name, my dear?
Just plain Irma, ma'am.
Oh, dear.
Oscar!
Irma. Of course. It's a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
What wonderful words. Did I write them?
I've never much cared for the name myself.
Poor thing. Well, let's get started, shall we?
Oh, Mrs. Paget, I should probably... Gertrude, I should probably mention that someone, well... We may be expecting a visitor tonight.
But don't let that interfere with your reading.
Oscar!
What? We might as well make constructive use of the time. I'll read Jack just after my proposal to Gwendolyn. Mr. Worthing will start there.
She's just such a gorgon. I love her. Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this most recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mama, I must beg you to retire. Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
Mr. Worthing and I are engaged.
Pardon me? You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged, either I or your father, should his health permit, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be.
Oh, Lord.
The interruption you spoke of has arrived.
Someone to see you, ma'am. He won't give his name, but he says you're expecting him.
It's all right, Mrs. Torrey. Let him in. Oh, Oscar.
Hold steady, old girl.
From the look on your face, may I assume it is a relative?
Mrs. Langtry, may I present...
I told you, no need for names. Mrs. Langtry,
Yes?
I think you know why I'm here.
Yes, I do.
You have something for me then?
Yes.
You know, you're not exactly what I expected.
And just what did you expect?
I don't know. Someone more unwholesome looking, I suppose.
I can be plenty unwholesome if the situation warrants, believe you me.
Well, when you say it like that, I do.
I hate to call anyone's manners into question, but I'm used to being introduced.
Sorry, Mrs. Paget.
Gertrude! Gertrude Paget, dear, and you are?
As I told you, no need for names.
Oh, nonsense! I'm Gertrude. This is Lillie, Oscar, and Irma.
Irma, suits you.
What's that supposed to mean?
Never mind.
Why, you little got-rat coming in to frighten Mrs. Langtry.
Mrs.
I don't
Torrey!
know what you're after, but if you have this one...
Mrs. Torrey, please!
Sorry, ma'am.
You should be. The package, Mrs. Langtry, if you please.
Come here! Come here! Sit down! Sit down immediately! Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, a physical weakness in the old. Irma, a cup of tea for the gentleman, if you please. Lillie is not going to give you anything until you start behaving like a gentleman and telling us who you are and where you came from and drink your tea.
Madam,
Oh, you're wasting time if you're planning to do battle with me, sir. I shall not be moved. Name?
Smythe. John.
How original!
You best be careful.
Now, who are your parents?
That's enough, Mrs. Langtry.
You want your package, don't you? Who are your parents?
I lost both my parents.
Or they ran away!
To lose one parent, Mr. Smith, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both just looks like carelessness. Where is your monocle?
What monocle?
Oh, the one you usually wear. You've taken a good squint at nearly everyone in the room, and then there is that rather deep impression on the one side of your nose.
What kind of a witch are you?
Oh, not a witch, I assure you. Beyond the obvious facts that you are a bachelor, a Freemason, and a somnambulist with a fondness for toffee, I know nothing about you whatsoever. Air! I need air!
Oscar, the window!
What? Oh, yes.
What's going on?
The lady's not well, can't you see?
Is that all right?
Is that better, Gertrude?
Help me up!
Help her up, ladies.
I want that
Oscar! What's that
package.
on your head? Oh, never mind, it's just a cowlick.
I want that package and I want it now.
To the window, to the window!
Here, ladies, bring it
You
here.
asked for it.
Fire, Mrs. Langtry, fire! We've got to get you out!
Oh, Lord, we've got to get out of here.
Oh!
There.
There's no exit there!
On my way.
Well, that takes care of that, doesn't it?
Let's do the same. Ladies,
Oh,
quickly.
one moment, Oscar!
Mrs. Paget, where are you?
Oh, just a false alarm, as I assured you.
What? Are you sure?
Oh, go and calm the people in the street, Irma, come on.
Yes, ma'am, if you think
Go on. Probably just some precocious boys making mischief.
Oh, Oscar. Mr. Holmes! It's you!
It is I.
Well done.
Please, forgive my foray into your territory, Mrs. Langtry, but I'm afraid it was necessary.
If you say so, Mr. Holmes.
Was I satisfactory?
Admirably done, my friend.
Mr. Holmes, you missed a performance that surely would have gone down in the annals of theatrical history, had anyone had the opportunity to witness it.
I'm Dr. Watson, but was he good?
Good. His expression on his face, his manner and the way he talked and moved, his very soul seemed utterly transformed. The stage lost a fine actor when you became a specialist in crime, sir. Had I not been apprised of the gambit on my way in, I'm not sure I would have known.
You knew?
I felt that I may need Mr. Wilde's assistance at some point, and I wanted to ready him for any possible violence.
Oh, Mrs. Langtry, you look peaked. A bit of whiskey, perhaps?
No, thank you, Dr. Watson.
Mrs. Langtry, it has come to my attention that there are two vital pieces of information in that note which you so conveniently burned. One of them was the specificity of the ransom. What did John Smith really come to collect?
The 10,000 pounds we told you.
Mrs. Langtry,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I feel certain that you do. Are you protecting someone?
Good God, Lillie, not that twit Bertie.
Oscar, please!
I'm sorry, but God somewhat overestimated his abilities when he fashioned the Prince of Wales.
Mrs. Langtry, when a woman thinks that her house is on fire, her instinct is at once to rush to the thing which she values most. A married woman looks to her baby. An unmarried woman looks to her most valuable possession. Where did you hide the ransom? When the cry of fire was raised, your eyes went immediately there. There are 10,000 pounds behind the right bell pull. I will be returning to the stage, portraying Algernon Moncrief in the importance of being forthright.
Oh, let it be the 10,000 pounds!
Mrs. Langtry.
Holmes, Mrs. Langtry is unwell. Perhaps...
It's all right, Dr. Watson. Bravo, Mr. Holmes.
May I see the blackmailer is really after?
Good God!
Astounding!
It is, isn't it?
A bit on the meretricious side. I can see why you don't wear it in public. Garish even by Cleopatra's standards.
It takes a great woman to wear a necklace like this. And Mrs. Langtry is just such a woman.
Where have I seen that diamond before? Lillie!
You are the only man I know who could make such a connection. Or have you made it as well?
It was made for me. Her Majesty's attendant, Abdul Karim, paid me a visit this afternoon.
What did he say?
I would rather you tell us the story, Mrs. Langtry.
I insist that you tell us the story.
A lifetime ago,
Go on.
I was in love with Bertie.
Can you skip this part?
You didn't know him, Oscar. No one did. 15 years ago, Bertie was a completely different person than the one we've come to recognize. He wasn't shiftless and irresponsible, a corpulent Philistine to be made fun of. Not then. He was young, and he was... We fell in love. I mean, really, truly in love. He wanted to divorce Alexandra and marry me.
The Prince of Wales giving up the throne for the woman he loves? Not bloody likely.
Language, Mr. Wilde.
I know that now. The night we met for the last time, he gave me the necklace. The stones were taken from the crown jewels, the best from every piece of the collection. He said, if you cannot be a part of England's history, then at least you should be able to wear it. He had breathtaking counterfeits made up in countless countries and replaced the gems himself.
But these counterfeits are not real stones.
No.
Why not? God knows he can afford it.
He liked the idea of his mother wearing coloured glass and being ignorant of the fact. Victoria, you know, was very hard on Bertie. She blamed him for Albert's death. Can you imagine blaming a child like that? He wanted to work, to contribute, but she denied him any official role. He was humiliated, publicly, privately. Jokes were made, such as, how is the Queen like the weather?
I don't know.
She rains and rains and rains and still won't give the poor son a chance.
Sorry, hadn't heard that one before.
And now I'm being blackmailed. The letters and the photograph for the necklace.
And so is the crown. £250,000, or the story of Bertie's surreptitious exchange appears on the front page of every newspaper in the world.
I must say, without the necklace in his hands, the criminal's really counting his chickens before they've hatched.
I think people who count their chickens before they're hatched act very wisely. Because chickens run about so absurdly that it's impossible to count them accurately.
Oscar?
Yes?
Shut up!
Right.
So she knows. Oh, the Queen
The
doesn't...
Queen doesn't know.
But you just...
It was Bertie who sent Abdul Karim. It is Bertie who is requesting the return of the necklace.
That's not true.
I'm sorry to say that it is.
It's mine. It was his to give and he gave it to me.
Does a person plot and scheme and arrange for counterfeits so as to go undetected when he is simply taking what belongs to him? Mrs. Langtry, are you unable to relinquish this necklace because it represents the love you once shared with the Prince of Wales? Or because so long as it is in your possession, you are able to bask in the thought that you have the Queen of England at a disadvantage?
I am keeping the necklace for the simple reason that it belongs to me. And now you know everything.
I don't think that I do. It has been my experience that when a person unburdens herself, tells everything there is to be told, there is a certain relaxation of the facial muscles. At no point during the evening have I seen this telltale sign of tranquility on your singularly symmetrical countenance.
May I? Thank you.
Holmes.
Pardon me, Mrs. Langtry.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
You were saying, Mrs. Torrey?
There's a constable outside.
Tell him there's no need for concern.
He's very adamant. He wants to know that
Oscar, would you?
Consider him gone.
No, ma'am. He insists on hearing it from the owner of the residence.
Oh, Lord.
Come on, old girl. We'll quiet the authorities together.
I suppose this means you will no longer pursue my case of the missing letters.
It means nothing of the kind.
You had the necklace in your hands. Why'd you give it back to her?
My dear Watson, that necklace is the absolute property of Mrs. Langtry. Had I taken it from her, I could have been accused of theft. No, she must hand me or the crown that necklace of her own free will.
How on earth will you get her to do that? You heard her. It belongs to me.
I didn't say it would be easy. In fact, I think it will be a task I will not relish completing, and at this point, I think I will be resorting to a piece of trickery which I find at this point wholly unappetizing. Well, onward. We must now deal with the awesome piece of the puzzle we were handed tonight. We now know with whom we're dealing with.
We do?
You have heard me speak of Professor Moriarty?
The famous scientific criminal.
In calling Moriarty a criminal, you are uttering libel in the eyes of the law. The greatest schemer of all time, the organizer of every deviltry, the controlling brain of the underworld, a brain which might have made or marred the destiny of nations, that is the man.
How do we know he's involved in this?
Oh, yes. You weren't here for the introductions. Come, I'll enlighten you as we travel.
Confounded idiot!
What was I supposed to do? Stay there and be burned alive?
You should have followed the plan. Collected the ransom and then left.
I couldn't! There was some old cow that kept asking me questions.
What old cow?
Gertrude something.
Gertrude Paget?
That's it.
Let me correct myself. You are not a confounded idiot. You are a blithering moron! I had Roddick watching Gertrude Paget's house all day. She never left. She was febrile and confined to her bed.
No, she was there. I tell you, I saw her.
You saw an imposter.
You know, I've grown a little tired of the way you treat me.
Oh, have you?
In fact, I'm not sure I want to go on with this.
You'll go on until the job is done.
Why should I?
Why? First, you accept the job. Second, you need the money. And third, I wouldn't eat that toffee if I were you.
Why not?
Take a good look at it.
I don't see anything.
A minute perforation at one end.
What's this powder?
And what do you suppose it might be, Mr. Smythe?
I almost ate this on the way here!
Ah, but you didn't. You're more predictable than the rising sun. Should you think of leaving my employ before you have been dismissed, bear in mind that you will feel the full force of my displeasure at the most unexpected of moments. Where have you been, Kitty?
Convincing old Bobby that he's not seen my face somewhere before, that's where.
Did you follow Mrs. Langtry this afternoon as I instructed?
Yes, but
But what?
I lost her.
Must I do everything myself? Your only responsibility was to track the movements of one woman.
I was carrying 3 of little Miss Langtry's hat boxes at the time.
You were to follow her!
She sent me on an errand. I couldn't very well say no to my mistress, could I? I had to run to the milliner's, then take a message to her dressmaker. There was a fog. And you, oh, my courageous nephew, jumping out the window like a little girl.
Why were you giving me such a hard time all about my runaway parents and then imitating my accent and making fun of my name?
I was playing the part. I'm the loyal servant, remember? And you were supposed to be the menacing blackmailer. Bravo!
Oh, sorry I don't have your theatrical background, Aunt Kitty. What was it again? A knife-throwing act on the pier of Blackpool when you weren't forging payroll checks?
Don't you dare make fun of my career, you besotted ninny! Mrs. Langtry, I...
Silence! Can you confirm the obvious for me? That Mrs. Paget was Holmes in disguise?
It was him all right, but he doesn't know you're in this.
Oh, he knows. I left a calling card. Welcome aboard, Mr. Holmes. I've been expecting you.
We're not taking on Sherlock Holmes, are we?
Well, I told you it was a possibility she might go to him.
Yes, but...
Don't tell me you're afraid.
Listen, this isn't turning out quite the way you said it would.
Things might be different if you had succeeded in your part of the plan. I gave you the role of a lifetime playing opposite one of England's greatest actresses.
According to the love-addled male critic.
A year in that household, and yet you were unable to uncover the whereabouts of either the letters or the necklace.
I wasn't informed that she's the most secretive person on the planet and confides only in effeminate Irish playwrights. I spent a year of my life waiting hand and foot on that talentless Latin, and not for 1 minute did anyone ever suspect me. Now that's a performance, and all because you said I would be rewarded with more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes.
That reward still awaits you, if you do as you are told.
And that name, Irma, what's the point of that?
Oh, it suits you, Kitty.
Shut up!
Touchy.
Will my sister ever saw in your half-witted father?
Stop. Oh.
If you too can control your emotions and follow my orders to the letter, you will look back on this experience as nothing more than a slight inconvenience on your way to untold riches. Do you think you can do that?
Yes, sir.
Type this note to Mr. Holmes. There will be a windowless cab at the unlit corner of Baker Street at 11:30 tonight. Enter the cab alone. If you fail to appear, I cannot be held responsible for the fate of a certain party. Deliver the note to him in the same manner as the others, not before 9 o'clock tomorrow evening.
Yes, sir.
Prepare the Hamilton Gas Works as instructed.
And we should have done what I wanted to do. Bust into the place, held a knife to her throat and say, "Give me the necklace, lady, or slit your new smile from ear to ear."
Smythe, if the hunter doesn't stalk his prey, it isn't really a hunt. When and if extreme measures of persuasion are called for, don't you think an abandoned building on a lonely stretch of road miles from civilization would be a less foolhardy place to conduct the proceedings than the lady's residence? All right. Flynn and Roddick are here. I suggest you get to work. After you, gentlemen.
I'm not sure I like this.
There's not a whole lot you can do about it.
Oh, isn't there?
Not if you want to remain alive. That man almost poisoned me with my own toffee. What? Don't look at me like that. You make me nervous when you do that. Cut it out!
I don't think there's a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow. But I think there might be a nice consolation sum if we're smart enough to grab it. Only I'll need your help.
What do you mean?
She's got lots of ready cash. She had £10,000 all ready to buy you off. I saw it. What if we were to give her her letters back for that? Forget some stupid necklace you'd have to fence.
We don't have the letters. Hell, we've never even seen them.
We don't need them. I know her handwriting well enough, and the professor was kind enough to read me that one passage.
Why did he do that anyway? He knows what you do for a living.
Because he's not as bright as he thinks he is. We show her a bit of letter, like this, hand over the forgeries, collect the money, and disappear into the night. Oh.
But what if we fail?
But screw your courage to the sticking place, and we'll not fail.
No, he'd find us.
Not in America. Big country America. Lots of theatre. I could start over, finally be appreciated for the talent I am. And you could do whatever you like.
Maybe buy a farm somewhere.
Now you're thinking.
Animals and fresh air.
All of it yours. Hello? What do we have here? Why, it's some of Mrs. Langtry's personal stationery. Oh, let me see. How did it go? Oh, yes. My darling Bertie. Oh.
Hello, miss. Lovely evening, isn't it?
What? Yes. Pardon me.
No need to apologize.
No!
Let's get come on. Don't do that little pretty face of yours. You've got to hurry.
Light the lamp.
What about the leftover gas?
There is none. Light it.
Right.
No exits.
None.
The window.
Nailed down.
And this one?
Freshly corked.
And what if he breaks the glass?
Iron bars.
Show me how the gas is released.
Like this. Remove the pin.
Oh, careful!
I'm not really doing it. Pin out. 3 quick turns to the right. Bon voyage! Once it's been cranked, you can't turn it off.
Where's Kitty?
Probably going up Pont Street with a fine-tooth comb.
I admire her tenacity.
Oh, all this. It's only if we don't get the necklace, right?
How secure is this door?
Planks as thick as my head, with bolts to match.
Well, let me hear it then.
The professor wants to hear the door!
Bring her in.
Open the door! Bring her here!
Let's go! Right this way! Over here! Have
Give the lady her sight. Mrs. Langtry, allow me to introduce myself. I am Professor Moriarty. I hope you haven't been terribly inconvenienced by this detour.
Would it matter?
No! Your new friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, will be arriving shortly. How would you like to save his life?
What do you mean?
If you tell me the location of the necklace, I will see to it not only that the letters and photograph are burned, I will allow Mr. Holmes to go on living.
You underestimate the man.
Is that a no?
You're quick.
As we planned,
Yes, sir.
the boys will be here with Holmes soon. I will be back in 1 hour.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Leave something on me, I'll catch a chill.
Listen to you. I bet people are always telling you how pretty you are. You must get tired of it. Too good to talk to a bloke like me?
That's not it.
Well then,
What?
do you get tired of people always complimenting you?
I'm not complimented all the time, just occasionally. It's nice, I suppose.
Oh, I bet it is. Rich folks, toffs, princes and kings and the like.
Not always.
You mean you get it from the street peddlers and urchins and gutter rat types as well?
Not that exactly.
Well, what exactly? I'm not a blithering moron. I can understand things with, you know, nuance.
I just meant that you never know who might find whom attractive. Desire is a strange science. The laws of desire, that is.
I've noted that myself. Oh, take my mom and dad, for example. What did she ever see in him? Well, she did. And here I am. Not exactly fair to me, but nobody asked my opinion, seeing I wasn't born yet.
Exactly.
Right. What do you know about what's fair? To the manor-born, servants, jewels, and the like?
You don't know much about me, do you?
Enough.
Then you know that I was born into a family of 6 boys. 6. I was the only girl. My mother died giving birth to me, and my father held me accountable. He worked in a livery, so you can imagine the wealth by which we were surrounded. He was a proud man, determined that his sons should have the best education possible. Since I was a girl, it was taken for granted that nothing extraordinary in the way of schooling would be provided for me. Meanwhile, my brothers were receiving lessons in Greek, Latin, and mathematics, but since I happened to be born female, I had to beg and cajole and flatter my way to being taught by my brother's tutors after their lessons were over. When my father discovered the truth, he said they might as well have been teaching a monkey how to think. Tell me, Mr. Smith, do you think that was fair?
Oh, don't cry.
I'm not.
Well, don't. You've done bloody well in your life. Look where you are now.
Yes, look where I am.
Oh, come on, this isn't your fault, you know.
Of course it is.
No, it's not. Now, don't go all mush on me.
Oh.
What?
My wrists.
Too tight?
Yes.
Let me take a look.
If you could manage to loosen it a bit.
Right. Oh, hold on. You are a clever little wench, aren't you?
What are you talking about?
I was just about to untie you.
Because you're a gentleman at heart, and you can see that I'm suffering. Look into my eyes, John.
No. Don't look at me. Stop looking at me. Alrighty then.
Wait, no, John, just hear me out. I can explain it all.
You
It's
be
not everything.
quiet.
John.
No looking at me, and no talking to me. Do you understand? Women's eyes. Get innocent men like me into trouble. 10 more seconds and you would have gotten me to chauffeur you home and cook you dinner. Idiot! Don't be done in by pretty girls. Ow! I've got to take a break. I was just having you on, you know. Just wanted to see how far you'd go, that's all. Don't move a bloody inch. You hear me?
Yes!
Mrs. Langtry, oh my God, are you all right?
Mrs. Torrey, how did you get here?
Oh, I followed them, ma'am. I saw them take you and jumped in the nearest cab. They haven't hurt you, have they?
No, but Mrs. Torrey, we've got to get out of here. Quick, my wrists!
No, I can't see how they've tied it. Oh, I'm so nervous, I'm falling apart.
Don't panic. Now listen to me. Are you listening?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there someone outside the door?
There was, but he stepped away. That's how I was able to get in.
Do you know where he went?
Oh, nope.
Was it that man Smith, or was it someone else?
Oh, I'm not sure. It's dark out there. I'm sorry, ma'am. I guess I'm not a very good arrowman, am I?
Nonsense. You found me, didn't you? Let me think. Oh. Is there anything out the window?
No, ma'am. They're filthy.
All right. This is what we're going to have to do. We'll just have...
Oh, the wind! It's so filthy! Oh, the door! It's so dark out there!
Good God, woman, have you gone mad?
That's it exactly, ma'am! Oh, what fun! I haven't felt like this since I was a child at Christmas! You're perplexed, aren't you? Why, of course you are. And you should be. You know, you're not very bright. Who are you? Bright enough to ask that question, though. Perhaps there's hope for you. My real name is Kitty Dupree.
Not much of an improvement over Irma, is it?
That'll be enough of that.
I guess it will.
I've taken all the high-handedness from you I'm going to take. Oh, I bet your mind is reeling now. You're thinking, what's What's going on? Who can she possibly be?
You're in cahoots with Professor Moriarty, and you wormed your way into my household in good graces with the intention of discovering the location of the necklace.
Not bad. Although I doubt a 6-year-old would have had any trouble connecting the dots.
One may smile and be a villain.
Villainess! Hamlet's not my favorite. Too indecisive.
A whole year out of your life, Kitty, with nothing to show for it. That must have been frustrating for you.
Not half as frustrating as standing in the wings watching you butcher perfectly wonderful characters with your ham-fisted portrayals. Meanwhile, I can't get cast as a ticket taker, and all because I don't have your face, and your figure, and your magical way with producers and writers.
You're right, it's not fair.
I'm not Smythe. That won't work.
What do you want, Kitty?
I want what I have coming to me for 1 year at hard labor. The £10,000 you were prepared to pay.
And what do I get?
Your letters and the photograph.
Aren't they currently in the possession of Professor Moriarty?
He thinks they are, but what he really possesses are forgeries.
I guess that settles the argument about honor amongst thieves.
I'm not a thief. I'm an actress. Thieves steal. I am being meagerly compensated for endless hours as your personal handmaiden.
You have the letters on you, then?
I have one right here.
Let me see it.
You may have a tantalizing glimpse. No more.
That's my handwriting.
Certainly is.
Read it to me.
My, aren't you the suspicious one?
£10,000 is a lot of money, Kitty. A person could start over with a sum like that.
My darling Bertie, I love you so much that I quite tremble for fear you may get tired of me. Were that the case, I think I should die.
That's enough.
Are you sure it gets better?
You've got to give me more than the letters.
Like what?
You've got to get me out of here.
I'm not a magician, sweetheart. The only way you're getting out of here is by telling the professor where that love trinket is.
I'm afraid she is right, my dear. Oh, did I frighten you, Kitty?
You?
Yes?
It hasn't been an hour.
No, it hasn't. What's that you've got in your hand?
Oh, this! It's nothing.
Let me guess. It's a letter. Written by... No, don't tell me. Mrs. Langtry to the prince. Or, more accurately, a letter pretending to be written by Mrs. Langtry to the prince. Correct. You see, Mrs. Langtry, I plan more than participate in my endeavors. And that often necessitates that I associate with persons whose integrity and intelligence is at times somewhat lacking. Kitty, why would I read one of Mrs. Langtry's letters to a known forger? You see, this is what I mean. Because I knew at some point you'd decide to strike out on your own using your greatest talent. Since it was easier to secure your failure than to suppress your instincts, I read for you an actual letter that had only been altered in one respect. Something I knew Mrs. Langtry could not fail to notice, no matter how fine your duplication of her hand.
I never began the letter. My darling Bertie.
Ah, yes. Oh, now, Kitty. Don't fret. I never expect nor require an individual to overcome his nature. And I am still in need of your services today.
Get in there.
If I were half a day younger, I'd thrash you.
Well, well, Mr. Sherlock Holmes! A pleasure to make your acquaintance.
I'm afraid you will be of a different opinion when the day ends, Professor Moriarty.
You'll forgive me if I don't tremble at that statement.
A small wager, perhaps?
Such as?
The return of Mrs. Langtry's personal papers.
If.
At the end of the day, you find yourself defeated.
Mrs. Langtry's papers and the photograph it is, delivered personally and set ablaze. Mr. Wilde, how do you happen to be here?
He was lurking around Baker Street. Tried to follow Flynn and Roddick, so they nabbed him.
I've come to rescue my friend, Mrs. Langtry.
Oh, Oscar.
How gallant of you.
And you should be ashamed of yourself, Mrs. Tory.
The name is Kitty Dupree.
Not much of an improvement over Irma, is it?
You idle weed!
Counterfeit maid!
Silence! I thought I told you. It was the unimaginative mind that immediately turned to firearms.
No, it's his! Roddick jumped him and this gentleman shot him in the arm. Blood all over. Flynn's taking him to a doctor now. But Roddick managed to wrestle this gun from him. He wasn't king of the ring for nothing, you know.
I hadn't heard you were a violent man, Mr. Holmes.
I'm not.
Mr. Roddick might have something to say about that.
This one was tackled without breaking a sweat.
I haven't eaten in over 2 hours. I'm in a weakened state.
Have they hurt you, Mrs. Langtry?
I'm all right.
Hello, Irma.
Shut up!
Nice touch, her name, if a bit obvious.
A calling card. No more.
What are you saying about me?
Your name, or alias rather. Irma Tory? Irma Tory! Rearrange the letters, what do you get? No?
Moriarty!
I wanted to return the favor somehow, but the only anagram I could come up with for Sherlock Holmes was, "Oh, smell her socks." That's what I thought. Forgive me, Mrs. Langtry, for not revealing what I had learned of Mrs. Tory, but I didn't want to frighten you, and I felt we might gain an advantage if she were left in the dark a bit longer.
I understand.
Some advantage that turned out to be.
Well then, down to business. Since you seem to like guns so much, Mr. Holmes, Smythe, hold that one to his head.
What?
You heard me. Hold the gun to his head. Or hold it to your own. I don't care. You'll be dead by the end of the day if you don't do as you are told. Care for a piece of toffee? Mrs. Langtry, where is the necklace? Mrs. Langtry, I give you my word. As a man of science, I do not make idle threats.
Don't! You will be in great danger if you do.
Are you prepared to die, Mr. Holmes? All for a handful of baubles.
Which belong to the crown.
It is my intention that the crown should have them back.
You didn't tell us!
Silence! Mrs. Langtry, I repeat, where is the necklace?
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
I'm sorry, Mr. Holmes.
You will be if you tell him.
The sitting room. Behind the right bell pull.
Oh, Lillie.
I really wish you hadn't done that, Mrs. Langtry.
The lady had no choice. And now, if you'll excuse me, this is one errand I will see to myself.
What do we do with them?
Nothing. Until you hear back from me. I'm sorry, Mrs. Langtry, that I cannot simply take your word. If you've told me the truth, you'll be released. If not, then let me wish you and Mr. Holmes and Mr. Wilde a speedy journey to the other side. Stay on him.
Yes, sir.
Take this. I wouldn't provoke Kitty if I were you. She's quite the marksman. Used to have an act called, Dupree's Daggers.
Kitty, you modest thing. You have carnival experience.
What do we do with him?
The playwright won't give you any trouble.
You think not, do you?
I think you would avoid any action that might further muss your attire. As it is, you've already torn that fine Irish linen you're wearing.
What? Where is it torn?
Oh, Oscar!
Farewell.
Light?
Oh, look at you. In case you haven't noticed, there's a lady present. Lord! Ladies present!
I'm something of an expert on tobacco ash. Perhaps you've heard.
I can't say that I have.
This is my latest specimen, not without merit. Fresh coal?
So what?
Those iron bars look rusted out to me.
I'm sure that's none of my concern.
Well, it might be to some poor devil who's caught in a trap. This used to be the Hamilton Gas Works.
How should I know?
The letters on the wheel over there. HGW. Mrs. Langtry, you're shivering. Oscar, put something over Mrs. Langtry's shoulders, will you?
Right, here you are, old girl. We'll have you warmed up in a jiffy.
I bet you think you're a lot smarter than we are.
Only more observant. For instance, when Smythe came to Mrs. Langtry's to collect the ransom, you might recall that Mrs. Paget had commented that he had squinted at almost everyone in the room.
So?
So, the only person he didn't squint at was you, because he already knew you.
Oh, well done.
Quiet, you.
Not to mention the fact that the rancor which you and Smythe displayed toward one another is the kind usually reserved for blood relations, not strangers. But then, I suspected you before I knew you.
Oh, now this I've got to hear.
Mrs. Langtry was assaulted at a point in the play when every other character was on stage, and when there was a collective shriek coming from the audience covering her cry for help. The question became, therefore, was the assailant lucky, or was he supplied with information from someone who was intimately involved in the production? Mrs. Langtry informed me that you were her dutiful assistant, both at home and at the theatre. You informed Flynn and Roddick the exact moment to enter her dressing room, as well as the fact that the firearm on her table was merely a prop. And then, when you told us your Christian name, well...
Bloody hell if you want some kind of a machine!
Good God, man, don't you ever bathe? You smell like rotten vegetables.
Stop moving about.
Why, are you afraid I'll do something?
What could you do?
Well...
Shoot him, you fool!
I can't see!
Over there! Follow the cigar, he's by the window! He's getting away! Here's something to remember me by, Mr. Holmes.
The cigar's there. We'll see ourselves out.
No!
No! Smythe, this is all your fault!
You missed him with your bloody dagger!
Holmes!
No!
Well, then what happened?
I decided that I simply had to take matters into my own hands. You don't think she forgot the sandwiches, do you? I'm feeling rather like a bear arising from hibernation.
No. Mrs. McGlynn never forgets.
Very good. Now, where was I?
At the party.
You were just about to tell us.
Oh, yes! I leapt into action when I realized that Lillie had been taken against her will. Mr. Holmes had instructed me to stay with you at all times, since he was now aware that your dedicated servant, Mrs. Torrey, was not really your dedicated servant. But you insisted on going out unencumbered, as you put it.
Mrs. Langtry, why did you leave your home when I instructed otherwise? For your own sake.
I don't know. I needed to think.
To think about...
To be alone?
I often need time to myself to replenish here, you know?
You understand then?
Entirely.
Well, I don't. So then, I had to stay on Mrs. Torrey. I made up some ridiculous excuse. I'm writing a play about a fascinating domestic servant, but she obviously was agitated. And the next thing I knew, she excused herself to the, you know, and escaped through a window the size of a porthole. Ghastly. That's when I went to Baker Street, saw you getting into a cab when some ruffian pushed me in as well.
Yes, but Holmes, how did you get the blood on you?
That's the best part. He shot a man!
What?
I saw the whole thing! That gun went dead ka-pshoff in there. It was lovely. Great. Careful, Mrs. McGlynn.
Just anywhere, Mrs. McGlynn.
Yes, that's precious cargo. Now let's see. Where are my cucumber sandwiches?
Oh dear!
Not you again.
You see, Mr. Holmes, you're not the only one who can impersonate a woman. I mean,
You got it right the first time.
you'd be wise not to push Kitty Dupree, my friend.
Dupree, is that French?
And what's wrong with being French?
I think you just answered the question.
Where is Mrs. McGlynn?
Where else? Passed out over a bottle of whiskey. She is Irish, after all.
What is it you want, Kitty?
Payment for services rendered.
Kitty wants £10,000.
Perfectly absurd!
It's not enough.
You are a greedy one, aren't you, Kitty? Don't point that thing at me!
You're the one I'd really like to plug. I could never get an audition for one of your precious productions.
Isn't it enough that life is badly cursed? Must plays be too?
Are you a weed? Stand up.
Stay where you are, Mrs. Langtry.
Don't play the hero, sir. In my story, they wind up dead.
Fire at will.
You will not harm Dr. Watson.
We'll see. You're coming with me, Lillie. Get up.
Where are we going?
You're taking me to that necklace. Must be pretty important if it belongs to the crown.
Don't you think we're a little late? You heard me tell Professor Moriarty where it was hidden.
I don't think you told him the truth.
Are you calling me a liar, Kitty?
I don't know what I'd call you. A woman who has as many, shall we say, gentlemen friends as you do? Shallow might be the generous term for it.
How dare you speak to her that way?
The people who love only once in their lives are really the shallow people, Kitty. What they call their loyalty and their fidelity, I call either the lethargy of custom or the lack of imagination. Faithfulness is to the emotional life what consistency is to the life of the intellect. Simply a confession of failures.
What?
I know I am so clever that sometimes I don't understand a single word of what I'm saying.
Let's go.
You're not going anywhere. Not as long as there's a breath left in my body.
A bullet to the lung will take care of that. Move aside.
Watson, do you trust me?
Completely.
Stay where you are.
You'll regret that, my friend. Last chance, move aside.
I will not.
Au revoir, Doctor.
Bravo, Mr. Holmes.
Examine your weapon carefully, Kitty. Is it familiar to you? It should be.
What?
You took it from Smythe, correct?
After he took it from you?
You see, Smythe saw Roddick and me struggle. A gun went off, Oscar. Roddick went down. However, the gun that Smythe took from me was not the one that discharged. Roddick took that. It was the one you are now holding. A weapon you must have seen dozens of times backstage at the Lyceum Theatre.
You see, but you do not observe.
I was right there and I missed it. Brilliant.
Bloody hell.
Language.
Remember back at the gasworks, you said I smelled like rotten vegetables.
You still do.
That was very observant of you. Tomato.
But, Roddick, how in hell did you pay him off?
In advance. You see, although Roddick may be a criminal of the lowest order, several years ago, for the first time in his career, he was going to prison for a crime he did not commit. I saw his case in the press, and I came to his defense. He has proven eager to return the favor. He told me that the destination of the windowless car ride was the gasworks, as well as the fact that he would exchange in a mock scuffle where we would exchange firearms and the sweet blood of the tomato.
Oh, well
Bravo.
So the whole time Smythe had this gun to your head?
There was no real threat.
But Lillie, you couldn't have known that.
I did.
You were unaware of the ruse, Mrs. Langtry?
I was, until Smythe held the gun to his head, and Mr. Holmes said, "Don't. You'll be in great danger if you do." And then just for an instant, he looked at the gun, and I observed that it was my prop gun from the play Danger.
But you told him where the necklace was.
No, Dr. Watson. Kitty was right. The necklace has been moved.
Ah! Elementary.
I enjoyed performing with you very much, Mr. Holmes.
Professor Moriarty left us alone because his instincts told him that you were telling the truth. That is a testament to your talent, Mrs. Langtry.
It seems I've given some of my best performances off stage.
I must say that performing this little scene was rather fun.
Oh, you'll reconsider playing Algernon then.
Holmes! Stop!
Good God, where did you come from?
The tea cart.
Oh.
How in the world?
I suspect that Professor Moriarty's talents are not all in his head. May I presume you are double-jointed, sir?
You may.
But why the delay in your entrance?
Oh, Kitty. She's in a bit of a financial bind at present. I told her if she could secure the £10,000 on her own, she was welcome to it. You know, ladies first. Unfortunately, she failed. Well, down to business. Mrs. Langtry, you lied to me. But I'm nothing if not a forgiving man. Therefore, this is what I want.
Isn't that rather beneath you, Professor?
Forgiveness?
I'm referring to what's in your hand. Didn't we hear you say to Smythe, and I quote, "It is the unimaginative mind that turns immediately to firearms"?
What do you suggest?
A duel.
You're assuming I know something of the art.
Oh, I never assume. You gave yourself away. Your quote about the unimaginative mind is from Domenico Angelo, 1717 to 1802, founder of the most famous school of fencing in all of London and a well-known master of the art. Your choice of weapons, sir, unless, of course, you think you're not quite up to the challenge.
Saber.
Outstanding.
Lillie, take this awful thing!
Mr. Holmes! I quite enjoyed that. Farewell.
No! My friend, are you hurt?
No!
Are you sure, Dr. Watson?
I'm quite sure.
You risked your life for me, sir.
Nonsense. The weapon wasn't real.
Yes, but you didn't know that.
Why did he ever agree to a duel?
When vanity rears its head, even the greatest of intellects may be led astray.
Shall we go out?
Lestrade will take it from here.
Lestrade?
Scotland Yard.
Scotland Yard? You told Scotland Yard of this!
Only the barest of facts, I assure you.
Nothing's changed. Professor Moriarty still has my letters and the photograph.
Mrs. Langtry, where did you really go when you needed to be alone yesterday?
You never stop thinking, do you?
When the pieces of the puzzle do not fit? No.
You must have a theory.
It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has all the data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories, rather than theories to suit facts.
You are a remarkable man, you know. Not once have you judged me. You could have taken the necklace, and you didn't. And you saved my life tonight. I think I shall tell you.
Mrs. Langtry. It's quite late. Perhaps it would be better.
I think the hour suits the story.
Lillie, you needn't tell us anything.
Oscar, there is something that even you do not know.
What? Tell me this instant.
I went to see someone. Someone who means more to me than life itself, but I was snatched before we could meet.
Yes, and go on.
The photograph. There are 3 people in it. Myself, Bertie, and a baby.
Oh, dear.
A little girl, born in 1881 without the benefit of a...
You needn't say it.
So the innocent heart was not Bertie's wife, but rather...
My daughter's. Professor Moriarty did not threaten to go to the press with my letters and the photograph. He threatened to go to my daughter and to reveal to her our true relationship. That I'm not a doting aunt. That I'm, in fact, her mother.
Wait, 81? Weren't you seeing that congenital idiot, Prince Louis of Battenberg?
Bertie and I reconciled for one evening. When I discovered I was
No need.
he sent me to Paris to have the baby. That's where the picture was taken. She's only 12 years old. I couldn't let her find out like this. I thought just maybe there was a chance I could keep the necklace and the secret. It's difficult to explain. I'm afraid you must think me a hard person to risk her learning the truth, but that necklace, it's not just a necklace. It means that... It meant
that the Prince of Wales considered you his queen.
Yes. A little more than a youthful indiscretion, I'm afraid.
Nonsense. Some indiscretions are simply more youthful than others. That's all.
I think I should like to bottle you, Dr. Watson.
All right.
Good God, now what?
One moment, please. I have an appointment with someone just now. Would you all mind retiring to the next room, please?
Must we? I'd like to say.
I'm sorry, Oscar. This is private.
I know, that's why I'd like to say.
Are you sure you won't need me, Holmes?
I'm very certain there is no threat, Watson.
All right. Mrs. Langtry, after you.
Thank you. Oscar?
Come in. We'll be just in
Go
here,
on,
should you-
Oscar.
All right, all right.
You may come in.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Holmes. Oh, or I should say, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Karim.
I bring greetings from Her Majesty the Queen and the Prince of Wales.
Her Majesty has been apprised of the situation?
Oh, yes.
I see.
I have returned to hear the success of your mission and to collect what belongs to the crown. Oh, Her Majesty was pleased to hear that you offered to assist the royal family in this unfortunate affair. Oh, she knows that you are considered a man of great discretion as well as keen intellect. Oh, further, she wishes to reward you
You
for
may
your...
stop right there, Mr. Karim.
Why?
I do not have the necklace.
Yet. Is it a matter of hours or of days or...
It is a matter of my having failed.
You could not locate it.
Well, it is not that. In fact, I had it in my hands at one point.
Oh, you had it in your... Oh, you mean you let it get away from you?
That is precisely what I mean.
Is there no hope?
None, I'm afraid.
Oh, after your assurance, you gave your word.
I know.
Oh, this is scandalous. You mislaid the crown, sir.
I did, and I am sorry.
Oh, the great Sherlock Holmes! We shall see that you are brought to answer for this, and I can assure you, it will be no less than a fatal blow to your reputation. We will make certain of that. In fact, I would recommend that you relocate, sir. Somewhere where this gross dereliction is not frowned upon. The continent, perhaps. Or America. Goodbye, Mr. Holmes.
Wait!
You are the woman.
I have something for you.
Oh, Lillie, well done!
First, you must forget everything Mr. Holmes just told you. Tell the Queen that Mr. Holmes performed his duty admirably and with great discretion towards all parties. Will you do that?
Oh, yes.
I have your word.
Oh, you do.
Here, give this to Her Majesty.
The crown thanks you.
Mr. Karim, tell the Crown that I said... You're welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So shines a good deed in a naughty world.
Brilliant choice, Lillie. Forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much.
You didn't have to do that.
You were right. I was holding on to it for more reasons than I knew. Do you think Professor Moriarty will go to my daughter?
I shall challenge him to another duel if he does.
I cannot say for certain, Mrs. Langtry, but what I do know is that I have never known Professor Moriarty to continue playing the game once he knows he has been bested. Come in!
This place is busier than an opium den.
I said come in!
What's that smell?
Watson, blankets, quickly! Your letters and photograph are now ash, Mrs. Langtry.
He made good on his wager then?
Really?
What's that you've got?
Did you think, Mr. Holmes, that this would be the end? You see, Lillie, for Professor Moriarty, this was all about the hunt. And in this case, the hope that I would become involved.
What a heart-pounding evening of fiction!
Why fiction?
Mr. Holmes?
Because the good ended happily, and the bad unhappily, and that is what fiction means.
Oh, my goodness. I'm all in.
Oh, look at the time. If I don't get my 10 hours in, I'm useless. Lillie, shall we?
You have been more loyal to me than any man I've ever known.
Don't say that.
I think perhaps I may have affected you in some small way.
Mrs. Langtry, I have a confession to make.
No, you don't. You're not the only one who can observe things you know. You could have easily seen to it that the door was closed. Could you ever...
In another time, perhaps, yes.
How I should like to believe you.
Lady, by yonder blessed moon, I swear that tips with silver all these fruit tree tops.
Oh, swear not by the moon, the inconstant moon that monthly changes her circle orb, lest thy love prove likewise variable.
What shall I swear by then?
Do not swear at all. Or, if thou wilt, swear by thy gracious self, which is the god of my idolatry, and I will believe thee.
Adieu, and be happy.
Oscar, come, let's see if there's a cab to be found.
You were very brave tonight, Oscar.
Really? You're not just saying that?
No.
Well, I'm very suspicious of compliments, you know. I take great importance to your being...
Earnest.
The importance of being earnest.
Good night, Mr. Wilde.
Oh, yes. Good night. Good night.
Good night, Mrs. Langtry.
Dr. Watson, I think I shall keep you with me always, just here. That is if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Lillie, my love, please. I'm nearly catatonic with starvation.
Coming, Oscar.
What an evening. And to think I missed it all.
Medical emergencies come first, Dr. Watson.
I suppose so.
And seeing as the patient in dire need was your mother-in-law...
Yes.
What was the cause of her collapse?
Indigestion.
Ah.
Mrs. Langtry was quite taken with you, Holmes.
No, I don't...
Oh, no. Don't deny it. It was crystal clear. And why not? Unlike the Prince of Wales, you were willing to sacrifice everything for her. Namely, your reputation. Oh, sorry about the open door, Holmes. By the time I saw it, she was already on her way
I
to you.
intended for her to hear the conversation, Watson.
You did?
And she knew that I intended for her to hear it.
I see. You suspected she wouldn't be able to stand...
Exactly.
But to hear the Queen's attendant speak to you like that...
He was only performing as instructed.
No!
Remember when we were leaving Pont Street, I said that I would be forced to resort to a piece of trickery which I would find wholly unappetizing.
Yes?
Mr. Karim was told to come here and give me as thorough a dressing down as he could muster, calling into question my authority to the Crown, as well as my reputation. I thought he did quite well.
And of course, Mrs. Langtry was not aware of this.
No.
It had to be done, Holmes.
Yes, still.
Still?
A remarkable woman.
I thought so.
If I had only known her as I do now, earlier perhaps.
Yes.
Of all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these.
It might have been... Holmes.
Nonsense, nonsense. That way madness lies.
Ooh.
I feel adrift tonight, Watson, as though I've suddenly lost my moorings.
Ooh. I'll stay with you, Holmes.
No, it's getting late.
Oh, nonsense. I'm not the least bit tired. What?
I've had a thought about that serum.
Oh.
Yes, that might work.
That one that suppresses all the signs of...
Life, yes. Yeah. Work.
Good night, Mr. Holmes.
Good night, my dear Watson.